This article is about the 7 churches mentioned in the Book of Revelation. For other uses of see 7 churches. The 7 churches of Revelation, also known as the 7 churches of the Apocalypse and the 7 churches of Asia, are 7 major churches of early Christianity, as mentioned in the New Testament Book of Revelation. In Revelation, on the Greek island of Patmos, Jesus Christ instructs his servant John of Patmos, through an angelic intermediary, to write on a scroll what you see and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, and to Smyrna, and to Pergamos, and to Thyatira, and to Sardis, and to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. Churches in this context refers to the community or local congregations of Christians living in each city, and not merely to the building or buildings in which they gathered for worship. The 7 churches are located in Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamon, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, near Denizli. Character of the churches: Ephesus, the church that had forsaken its first love; Smyrna, the church that would suffer persecution; Pergamum, the church that needed to repent of allowing false teachers; Thyatira, the church that had a false prophetess; Sardis, the church that had fallen asleep and yet called itself awake; Philadelphia, the church that had endured patiently; Laodicea, the church that was lukewarm and insipid. 7 messages. The letters follow a common pattern. For example, the Lord first addresses each church and identifies himself, then defines things that he knows about the church in question. After this a challenge or reproach is given, followed by a promise. In all 7 cases the admonition is included, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches," although sometimes this comes before the promise and sometimes after. Although the letters differ in length in accord with the needs of each community, all conclude with an appeal to hold fast and to listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Each church is promised that everyone who conquers will be rewarded by Christ. Some historicists typically interpret the 7 churches as representing 7 different periods in the history of the Western Church from the time of Paul until the return of Jesus Christ. Schofield states that these messages by their very terms go beyond the local assemblies mentioned. He is of the opinion that the letters have a prophetic purpose disclosing the 7 phases of the spiritual history of the Church. Other writers, such as Clarence Larkin, Henry Hampton Halley, Merrill Unger, and William M. Branham also have posited the view that the 7 churches preview the history of the global Church. Historicism has been criticized by the Eastern Orthodox Fr. Dimitri Cosby, who writes that historicists take a greatly oversimplified view of church history, since dispensationalism is Protestant in origin, its church history is strictly Western. The dispensations take into account almost nothing of Orthodox history after the period of the early councils which we share with the West. Angels of the Churches, chapters 2-3 of the Revelation has specific messages for each of the 7 churches. The message of each of the 7 letters is directed to the angel of the particular church that is mentioned. Origen explains that these angels are the guardian angels of the churches, a view upheld by Henry Alford. But Epiphanius explicitly rejects this view, and, in accordance with the imagery of the passage, explains it of the bishops. John sees a vision of the Son of Man, who walks among 7 lampstands and has 7 stars in his right hand. Revelation 1:20 states that the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. The comparison of a teacher to a star is scriptural. Augustine of Hippo's reason for interpreting angels of the churches as the prelates of the church is that St. John speaks of them as falling from their first charity, which is not true of the angels. Others would say that the falling away relates to the churches, not to the messengers, as each of the 7 letters conclude with the words, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches." In the New Testament, the Greek word for angels is not only used for heavenly angels, but also used for human messengers, such as John the Baptist and God's prophets. C.I. Schofield has noted that the natural explanation of the messengers is that they were men sent by the 7 churches to ascertain the state of the aged apostle. But they figure any who bear God's messages to a church. See also Biblical numerology, Christianity in Anatolia during Roman times, early centers of Christianity, Eastern Christianity, events of Revelation, Seven Spirits of God, Summary of Christian Eschatological Differences. References. Further reading, Halley, H. H., Halley's Bible Handbook, p. 684, Schofield, C.I., The Schofield Reference Bible, p. 1332, Ramsey, W. M. The Letters to the Seven Churches of Asia. Hodder and Stoughton. External links, Catholic Encyclopedia, Angels of the Churches, Catholic Encyclopedia, Asia Minor, see section titled Spread of Christianity in Asia Minor, Branham, W. M., An Exposition of the Seven Church Ages, Voice of God Recordings, Jeffersonville, Indiana, 1965. The True Trend of the Churches Viewed Through Revelation Chapters 2 and 3 by Pastor Rocky Veach. This article incorporates text from a publication now in the public domain. Herbermann, Charles, ed. Catholic Encyclopedia. Robert Appleton Company.